Alrighty guys, we're live. Welcome to this episode of Aussie English. I guess it's not really an episode. This is the first lesson where we'll be diving into the free course that will be streamed online here on Facebook, Effortless Phrasal Verbs. This is a free course that I have that will be streamed online for free. And you can sign up using the link that I've attached in here, and you can pay for all the bonus material that's going to come out. But give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay, guys. Give me a like, give me a share if everything's going well, and if you want to spread the word. I hope you've already checked out the very first episode where we went through all the different kinds of phrasal verbs. Today we're going to be going through around and about, but I'll wait for a few more people to show up. I might give it a quick share just so that it gets boosted a little bit on Facebook, and a few extra people will hopefully see it. So if you have time, please feel free to give it a quick share on your wall. Let me just do this quickly. Tell me, where are you guys listening from today as well? Are you guys all in Australia? Are you overseas? What time is it where you guys are? How's your day been? How has your day been? So, 8 people. Awesome guys. I'm glad that you're joining me. I'm glad you guys are here. This is going to be a lot of fun. So the basic idea, again guys, for those of you who haven't seen the first episode, it's on Facebook, it's also on YouTube, and that episode I go through all the different kinds of phrasal verbs. So it's a really good one if you're trying to get your head around how to use phrasal verbs naturally and effortlessly like a native speaker. The basic idea with this course is going to be that twice a week, on Mondays at 7 p.m. and then Thursdays at 7 p.m, I'll be streaming a live class. It'll be live on Facebook for you guys to watch for free. I'll be covering all the different prepositions or particles that go after phrasal verbs. And so I'm going to try and teach you the concepts, not just here is a list of phrasal verbs using the verb to come, here's a list with using the verb to go. I don't think that that's very intuitive. I rather teach it from the point of view of the particle. So what does over mean? What does around mean? What does about mean? And why do we pair it with certain verbs? So that's going to be the basic idea. If you want to sign up for the course or enroll in this course, there are still 2 spots left where you can get it for $50. If you use the coupon code ONLY50, 2 words, ONLY, and then the number 50, FIFTY. If you use that coupon code, there's 2 spots left where you can get it for only $50. After we start and after those coupons are gone, it's going to be $97, okay? While the course runs, while I do this week to week. And then after we finish it and it's all packaged, it'll be increased a little bit more to about $110, okay? So just letting you guys know, that's about $4.50, I think, per lesson, okay? Per lesson. So again, give me a thumbs up, guys, if the audio is all good, and if you have time, give it a quick share. I've also created the Facebook group. So I just created that just now for all the members. This is what you get access to when you enroll in the course. You'll be able to do daily activities with me. I'll be running you guys through different exercises that cover the phrasal verbs we just learnt that week. So today's episode is going to be around and about and how those 2 different prepositions are used. And then in the classroom, in the online Facebook private group for students, we'll be going through exercises for that. Also, I guess I'll quickly mention, when you enroll in this course, you'll be getting these episodes as they come out, but I'm going to be combining this video with the slideshow that I'm reading off that has pictures of all the different phrasal verbs that I'll be talking about, so that you can listen, you can watch, and you can read all at the same time. You'll get a PDF, an MP3, you'll also get a Word document, all of those to download. There'll be exercises at the end of it, including every single phrasal verb I speak in the episode. So not just the ones that we go over. I highlight and go through every single phrasal verb in the transcript, my spoken use of English, and then give you exercises at the bottom. So that's the plan. Okay, guys? Enroll if you want. Check out the link. There's 2 spots left if you use the coupon code only 50. Only 50, and you get it for 50 bucks. Anyway, let's dive into it, guys. So today we're going to be going through how to use phrasal verbs that are followed by the particle around or about. Okay, so I've paired these together because maybe about 50% of the time, the literal phrasal verbs, quite often, it's going to be interchangeable with around or with about. Okay, so we're going to go through that. We'll get to that in a sec. The basic idea with this preposition in the literal form, guys, using around or about, is this action, okay? It's on a vertical plane. It's on a vertical plane and it's doing this, okay? So if something turns around, it does that. If something turns about, it does that. So it's this kind of movement, okay? So I want you to have that in your head the whole time this lesson as we go through. It's this kind of movement, okay? So let's just quickly go through and define the different uses of the particle around and about. I'll go through all of them. I'll outline them. We'll go through some examples for every single different one, and then we'll go over the same at the end again, and then we can open up into question and answer time, guys. Okay, so number one, we can use around and about for the literal form, for movement, right? So for movement like this. So this can mean in many directions, places, but it can also mean to rotate like this, okay? So it's turn around, you know, that movement of rotation. Number two is without purpose, around about without purpose. So to sort of do this with no real purpose, okay? Number three is in a circular route from one side to the other. So you imagine something's in the middle and you go from this side all the way around to the other side. So we just sort of covered that at the start there. Number four is to reverse your direction. So again, it's this idea. You've turned around, for example. You've reversed your direction. You could be driving a car and you come all the way around. And then number five, we have a whole bunch of miscellaneous uses of phrasal verbs with around and about. Some of them kind of have an attachment to the literal form, some of them don't, but we'll get to them, and we'll also go through some expressions that go with phrasal verbs that use around and about. Okay, so number one, movement in many directions or places. To trot around or to trot about. To trot around or to trot about. The horse trots about, okay? So that's trotting is the kind of movement that a horse makes when it's not running fast, but it's not walking. To trot, the horse trots about. And this is interchangeable with the horse trots around. So you can imagine standing at a paddock, watching a horse trotting. It's not walking, it's not running, it's sort of halfway between the two. And it doesn't really have a specific direction. It's just kind of trotting all around in multiple directions to different places. It's trotting around, it's trotting about. Imagine that this horse or this pony, as it's trotting, starts to jump, okay? So it's jumping with no real direction. There's no real the place that it's trying to go. It's just doing it all over the place. It's jumping around, it's jumping about. So the horse is trotting around and it decides to also jump around. The horse is trotting about and it starts to jump about. So those two can be interchangeably used. To trot around, to trot about, to jump around, to jump about. If the horse now picks up pace, so it starts going a little faster and it starts running, it's still doing this movement, right? It's going around and around, or it's going about the paddock. We could say that it's running around or it's running about the paddock. So the horse is running around the paddock, the horse is running about the paddock. No specific direction, no real place that it's trying to go. It's just doing this thing around and around and around. Imagine that instead of a horse, it's a dog, and this dog is running around, right? It's running around, it's running about a field or the paddock. Maybe it's chasing the horse, and it's decided to play. So it's playing around now. It's doing this movement. It's going all over the place with no direction in mind, no specific place it's trying to get to, but it's moving around. It's moving about. It's playing around. It's playing about. And so you'll notice in all of these examples, guys, around and about, either one of those, whichever one you decide on using, we just change the verb depending on what the animal was doing, right? If the horse was trotting, we say it was trotting around. If the horse was jumping, we say it's jumping about. If it was the dog and the dog was running, we say it's running about or it's running around. And if they're playing with each other, they're playing around or they're playing about, okay? So as a native speaker, when I see them doing this kind of movement, I instantly know, okay, about, around, and I think, what verb do I want to use that's going to describe how they're doing this thing? Are they playing? Are they running? Are they trotting? Are they jumping? And that's when I combine the two. I say, okay, around and about, jumping, and then I combine the two into the phrasal verb. So that's how I am thinking about these things and creating them effortlessly as a native speaker. All right, so number two, slide number 2 here. Imagine that we're talking about movement still, so movement, but this time it's in a circular route from one side to the other side. Okay, so it's going like this, one side to the other side, and I want to compare it to the previous definition that we just went over, meaning sort of in no real direction, with no real place or destination in mind. Okay, so we're comparing this movement. You imagine you've got something here and you're going from one side around to the other side. That's the first definition. And the second one is just no real place that they're trying to go. So sometimes we can change the meaning based on which one we use. Okay, so I'll go through some examples. If you go around town, right? You go around town, that is that you are in town, in a city where there's lots of buildings and people. If you go around town, it's just this idea of you're traveling around it. You're in town and you're going around. You're in town and you're going about. So again, around and about can be used interchangeably when there's no specific direction. However, if we're talking about going from one side of something, so imagine this is the city now or the town, and we're going from one side of the town around to the other side of the town, now we can't use about. Now we have to use just around. So this time I'm going from here around the town to the other side. I'm going from here around the city to the other side, okay? So no direction, no real place in mind. We can use around or about. But if we're doing this movement around the thing, it has to be around. So we go around, we go about town, or we go around the town by literally going from one side to the other. What's another example? So this time, imagine instead of just, the broad verb to go, we want to get in our car and drive. Okay, so we're doing the same thing. We're driving from one side of the town to the other side of the town. We say we're driving around the town. We're driving around the town. If, however, we drove into town, we drove into the town, and we were just driving around everywhere with no real destination in mind, we can say we're driving around town. Notice there that we don't have to say the town. We're driving around town. We can also, in that case, say we're driving about town. So about and around with no real destination in mind. But if you're going from one side to the other side, we have to only use around. The last example, imagine you get out of your car. So you step out of your car, maybe your wife gets out of the car as well, and you guys decide, okay, we want to walk around town. We want to walk about town. So now you're out of the car and you're walking around. There's no real destination in mind. Maybe you start running around, maybe you start jumping around, but you're walking around the city. You're also walking about the city. Remember, no direction in mind. We're just kind of fluffing about, doing whatever. And so we can use around and about. We're walking around town, we're walking about town. However, if we walk so far that we end up outside of the town or the city and we turn around and look back and, oh my gosh, the city's all the way back there, and we realize we have to get to a party on the other side of the city, and we don't have our car. We left our car in the city, so we have to walk all the way through the city, all the way over the city, all the way around the city to the other side. So if we walk around the city this time, it has to be the preposition around. So say we have to go this way and then this way to get to the other side of the city. This time we say we walk around the city. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. All right, let's do a few more of just this circular motion. So again, we can go around the town. We can go from one side to the other. We can drive around the town. We can drive from one side to the other. We could also drive around, say, a roundabout, and that would be that you have a roundabout in the road, you know, the circular thing that you drive around. But this time, instead of just going from one side to the other, we can continue and come all the way back again. So you could enter the roundabout, you could go into the roundabout in your car as you're driving, and if you just keep driving around and around and around, it's doing this. I'm driving around the roundabout. I'm driving around, and I might decide eventually this is the street that I want to go into. This is the street where we need to go down this street to a certain house, and that's when you would exit the roundabout. But until then, you're going around the roundabout, you're driving around the roundabout, you're moving around the roundabout. So again, I'm thinking around in my head, that's this movement, this idea, and then I change the verb to go around, to come around, to drive around, based on how I want to describe this movement occurring, okay? So again, that's what's happening with regards to cognitive linguistics. That's how I'm thinking about it. I pick out the preposition or the particle that I want to use, and I pick out the verb to explain the two, or explain how this thing is happening, and I combine it into a phrasal verb, okay? So again, we went through walk around. Maybe you're walking around the roundabout. You could keep going. Maybe you decide that you want to run around the roundabout, or you could also, if you decide to stand on the spot, right in the center of the roundabout. So imagine there's a car driving around you, around the roundabout, and you're standing in the center, and you decide that you want to keep your face pointing at the car the whole time. So you're rotating around, following the car as it spins around the roundabout, or as it drives around the roundabout. So you're spinning around, you're turning around, you're twisting around. Again, it's that idea of this time you're on the spot doing this movement, around and around and around, and we just pick a verb to spin around, to twist around, to turn around, and combine it with around to create those phrasal verbs. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And remember, with this movement, we can't really use about. About would be more, I guess you can use about if you want someone to turn about like this, but that's kind of reverse direction, which we'll get onto in a bit. But if you're talking about this action, you wouldn't say go about the roundabout. You would say go around the roundabout. All right, so where are we up to? All right. We also have, I guess I should compare it to the phrasal verb over, right? We'll get into this in a future episode, but for the purpose here, if for instance, I pick up my book and I turn my book over, it's this movement, right? So I could just do it once. So here's the book, I want to see this side of it, so I turn it over. I turn it over again. Or maybe I'm just holding it in my hands, turning it over. So I'm just turning it over again and again and again. The examples that I have here though, however, are the sort of comparison to around this time. So instead of turning it over, I could put it vertically and do this action. So now it's happening on the vertical axis instead of the horizontal axis. So that's where it's over, and this is around. And it can also be like this, but the basic idea is that I'm doing it on a vertical axis, I'm turning it around like this, whereas if it's on the horizontal axis, I'm turning it over, okay? So, for example, what have we got here? Oh, I wanted to introduce that because you can go over to someone's house as well, right? So I can go over, like, kind of like this movement, right? This movement to go over to someone's house, right? To go over somewhere. So if I go over to someone's house, I'm going over an amount of distance like this, and then I'm going to their house. So that's sort of describing it on, again, it's this action going up and then down. If I go around to someone's house though, again, it's that twisting on a vertical axis, twisting on a vertical axis, but it's doing this time. So we can use both to explain going around to someone's house or going over to someone's house. It's all about how you're thinking about that action. So I could go around to my girlfriend's house. He's going around to his girlfriend's house. He's going around, or he's going over to. He's going around to his girlfriend's house. She's coming around to my house. So my girlfriend is coming around to my house. Maybe she's jumping in her car and she's going to drive around to my house. We can also get these phrasal verbs to take objects, where I could say she's driving around to my house, she's driving around to the beach, she's driving around to the city. So again, it's just that idea of covering space, driving around. But maybe she's driving her ute around to the city, or maybe she's driving her ute around to my house. Okay, and a ute is a type of car. So she's driving around. Maybe in the ute, she's bringing some meat over for the barbecue that we're going to have at our house. So we're putting on a barbecue at our house. She's bringing some meat over. She's grabbed some lamb, some snags. She's going to chuck them on the barbie, but she's the one who's in charge of bringing the meat around to our house. So she's gone to the shops. She went around to the shops. She's bought some meat, and then she's brought that meat around to our house. She's brought her ute around. She's driven her ute around and brought around the meat. Okay, so there's that sort of, I want to get to the point where you understand that you can use objects as well whilst you're using these phrasal verbs. We can also obviously use the verb to take. So imagine she brings the meat around to our house. We don't eat all of the meat, and she decides afterwards that she's going to take it around to her house and finish later. So she's going to take the leftover meat around to her house and finish it later. Imagine we're all sitting around a table too. We've just smashed a lot of different food. We're really full, and someone decides they want to take some beers or some drinks around to different people. So maybe they take the beers around the table to different people. Okay, so I could pick up all these beers, I could walk around the table, I could take these beers around the table and hand them out to a bunch of other people. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. And in these examples, we can't use the we can't use the particle about. It has to be around, okay? All right, so again, these ones are a little more abstract. So these are moving away from the literal phrasal verbs that we just went over. This is moving more into the non-literal realm, although it kind of makes sense. But this one's many directions, many places, so we can use about and we can use around. The first one here is to sleep around, okay? To sleep around. Or we can also say to sleep about. To sleep around, to sleep about. And this means to have many sexual partners, right? So if you sleep with someone, you have sex with someone. If you sleep around though, so that we've modified the verb by putting a particle on the end of it, making it a phrasal verb, we sleep around or we sleep about, it means, you know, no particular direction, multiple places. So imagine that you're sleeping at this person's house with them, at this person's house with them, at this person's house with someone else. You're sleeping around, you're sleeping about. And we can also say to get around or to get about. Again, this is similar and can be used in many different ways. You know, you could get around town, as in go around town, you could get around in the town. But if you say that someone gets around a lot, you're talking about them having a lot of different sexual partners. So my ex-girlfriend really got around, or I get around all the time with a bunch of different people. They get around, they get about, he sleeps around with someone, or with many people, or he sleeps about with a lot of girls, okay? Similar to that one, we can say to mess around with, to mess about with, to fool around with, or to fool about with. This one is experiment sexually with. So it doesn't have to be that you have sex, but it's that you have kissed the person and anything else, and kind of experimented. Maybe you're a teenager, The teenagers messed around at the party. They messed about with each other at the party. They messed about, they messed around, they fooled about, they fooled around. So again, that one has a sexual connotation to it. And I guess the idea of why we're using around and about is that idea of no real purpose, no goal, no place, at least figuratively, that we're trying to get to. We don't really know what we're doing, and there's no real goal. Okay, so that's why we're using around and about. Similar to this, you might ask around or you might ask about to try and find an answer to something. And this is where you ask many people. So you imagine you've got people spread out all over the place, and you need to ask around to try and get an answer. You need to ask about to try and get an answer. So I need to get a bunch of people's opinions on this topic from work, so I'm going to ask around at work. Or I'm going to ask about at home and ask about all my friends and family and see what they think. To ask around, to ask about. So that's to ask many people. Similar to those, imagine that you decide to go shopping and you don't know exactly what you want to get. You just know you want to go shopping and you want to find a dress, but you've got no idea what. Okay, so you go to all these different shops. You are shopping around. You're shopping about. You're trying to find a good deal, you're trying to find a bargain, but you don't have any particular thing in mind. You're not set on a literal or figurative destination, so a goal, and so you're shopping around or you're shopping about. Similarly, again, if you take a friend around town to show them different things about town, then you can show them around, you can show them about. Okay, so you're showing them all these different things all over town. You're taking them around, you're taking them about town, you're showing them around, you're showing them about. So if it was my first day at university, the lecturers or the other students might show me around. They'll show me where the toilets are, they'll show me where the buildings are, they'll show me where I can get coffee, they'll show me about, they'll show me around. If at this university where I've just been shown around or I've just been shown about, imagine that there's a really dodgy looking dude who looks like a thief, like he's not there as a student, he's a lot older, and he's, snooping around, he's sneaking around, he's looking like he's trying to find things to take. Maybe he's going to take them home, take them out of the university, steal them, get off with them, run off with them. He's snooping around and he's sneaking around, okay? So again, the idea of just multiple locations, multiple places, and using around and about, and this time taking the verbs snoop, he's kind of looking really sus, he doesn't look like he's trustworthy, or to sneak as in to try and be really quiet. So he's sneaking around and he's snooping around. Maybe he's going to break into some of the different buildings and get off with a bunch of different computers or something. All right, now we'll move on to a different kind of use of around and about. We can use this, again, it's sort of the same, but these are all connected. But this one, we're going to specifically be talking about doing something without purpose. So with no goal in mind, with no real purpose. So the first one I have here is to fiddle around or to fiddle about. So if I fiddle with my book, it's that I'm just sitting down and I'm just kind of playing with it. I'm just fiddling with it. This is what fiddling with is. It's just to sort of have it in your hands and be maybe not really focusing on it too much, but just playing with it and just kind of to be fiddling with it. Mainly this kind of, touching it and just no real goal in mind. So I'm fiddling around, I'm fiddling about. If my shirt wasn't fitting very well and I kept pulling at it, or I kept trying to get it to fit nicely and I kept fiddling with the shirt, my parents could turn to me and say, stop fiddling around. Stop fiddling about. You're fiddling without purpose. There's no real goal. Stop fiddling around, stop fiddling about. Although I guess I know the goal is that I'm not fiddling around, I'm not fiddling about. I'm trying to make this fit. If I'm having a lazy day at home and I have nothing to do, so there's no school, there's no work, I'm just at home, I could be sitting around, no purpose. I I could be lying around. If instead of sitting, I'm lying down, I'm just lying around on the couch watching the TV all day, just doing nothing, sitting around, lying around the house. And if I'm being lazy, then I am lazing around the house, or I'm lazing around doing nothing. And again, we can use sitting about, sitting around, lying about, lying around, and lazing about, lazing around. If I want to go and see my friends during this day where I'm being lazy at home, I'm not doing anything, I'm sitting about, lying about, lazing about. If I go and see my friends, I might hang around with my friends. So I might hang around with them, and we might go to the shops, we might go around to the shops, and then decide that we might hang around at the shops for a bit. We might hang about at the shops. So in this kind of one, it's figurative, it's not literally hanging from something, but we use this as slang to mean to spend time doing something. We're spending time together, we're hanging out, and we could be hanging out around, with no real purpose, a location. We're hanging around the shops, we're hanging out together around the shops. So we're sort of near the shops with no real purpose. And I'm sure you guys have seen lots of young kids always hanging around outside. If instead of spending time with someone, I was just there by myself, looked like just standing outside the shops, not really doing anything, I could be standing around. So this time I'm standing, but it doesn't look like I'm, there's no real purpose. I'm just standing around. If I was standing, I could be standing around, right, and my parents are trying to build some furniture or lift something and move it. My mum might say to me, stop standing around and help us out. Help us pick up this furniture and move it. We need to move it over there. Help us move it. Stop standing around. Stop standing around, Pete. So to stand with no purpose. If maybe my mum and dad didn't want me to leave, they didn't want me to go off, they didn't want me to go around to a friend's house after they'd started moving this stuff around their house, they might say, did you want to stick around for dinner? Did you want to stay around for dinner? So we're hoping you want to stay and have dinner with us. Did you want to stay around our house? You should stick around and have dinner. You should stick around. You could also probably hear stick about. Yeah, you should stick about. Stick about and have dinner. But I think stick around would be the more common one there. And like standing around, if I was just waiting for them to cook dinner, I'm waiting around, or I'm waiting about. So again, no purpose apart from waiting. And so I could say, I'm waiting around, I'm waiting about, I'm waiting around for dinner, I'm waiting about for dinner. All right. If I started playing with the cat, I could be playing around with the cat. I could be playing about with the cat. And we use a bunch of different verbs here to talk about, I guess, joking around, playing around. We've got a bunch of different ways of saying this. The first one is to mess around. So to mess is just to play, to not really have any goal in mind. You're just doing these things. I'm messing around with the cat. I'm mucking around with the cat. I'm mucking about with the cat. So we're just playing, no real goal. We're just mucking around. We're just mucking about. Playing around, playing about, joking around, joking about. And Australians also often say clowning around or clowning about if someone's kind of making a fool of themselves or being like one of those kids in class that makes a lot of jokes to try and get a lot of laughs. He's clowning around. He's clowning about in class. We can also say, if we want to elevate this a little more and make it a little ruder, it's not too rude until we start saying swear words, but we could say to screw around or to screw about. We could say to stuff around, to stuff about, to bugger around, to bugger about. That's a very Australian one, to bugger around, to bugger about. So what do you do on your days off? I just bugger around home. I just screw around home, stuff around home, muck around at home, mess around at home. But we can also really elevate that to say fuck around or to say fuck about, okay? Depending on the context, that's going to be rude or just very, very, very informal. So you might say to a really good friend, if you say a joke, you're just joking around, You could switch in, oh man, I'm just fucking around. I'm just fucking around. It's just another way of saying that. And in that case, it's not really rude because you're not swearing at someone. You're just swearing, okay? So that's where worrying about swearing is more important with regards to who's in front of you, who you're talking to. If it's friends, it's probably fine. We can also say things like to piss fart around, which is just another way of saying not really do anything. This is something my dad used to always say to me. Stop piss farting around. Stop screwing around. Stop stuffing around. It's like being lazy, not doing anything with any purpose. And we can also say things like to bum around, to fluff around, to faff around, to bum about, to fluff about, and to faff about. She always bums about on the weekend doing nothing. He always fluffs about on the weekend doing nothing. All right, let's get on to the next one. So to reverse direction, guys. So this is facing forwards and I turn it around, I turn it about so that the back is now facing forwards. Okay, so that is to reverse direction. So the most common one here that you guys are going to know is to turn something around or to turn something about. So as we were talking about with the book, this one has to happen on a vertical axis with around and with about. I want you to turn this book around so I can see the front. Ah, okay. You can use about, but most often you're going to hear people say around. Turn it around. Or you might say, I want him to turn about in his seat. Turn him about. Turn him around, turn him about. So she turned around and looked at me. She turned about and looked at me. However, we can use turn around in a figurative sense to mean to improve, to come good. So things will turn around and get better soon. So that is that idea of reversing direction. So imagine that it's going forwards and then it suddenly turns around and goes backwards. If things are going badly, we could say they're going to turn around and go better. They're going to get better, okay? Things will turn around and get better. In that example, we would never say to turn about and get better. We would always say things will turn around. Things are going to get better. Let's get into some of these miscellaneous ones, guys. So ones that don't necessarily make too much sense. Although they do have a bit of a connection with that basic idea of no sort of, purpose in mind or no direction, So the first one that I have here is to boss someone around or to boss someone about. So if I have a younger sibling, I have a younger sister, which I do, or I have a younger brother, if I started telling them what to do, so clean my room, go over there, do this, put this on, wear this, that is me bossing them, like literally like a boss if I was their employer when they got older. If I was bossing them around like that, it's telling them what to do. It's giving them orders. Do this, do that. I want you to wear this. I want you to do this. So I'm bossing around my sister or I'm bossing my sister around. Notice there that we can split it or we can keep it together. Bossing around my sister, I'm bossing my sister around. Bossing about my sister, bossing my sister about. So let's go through some expressions as well, guys, with the phrasal verb, with the particle about and with the particle around. So you can ask someone, what are you on about? This one you might hear sometimes. What are you on about? If you're on about something, and this one has to be with about, to be on about something, it means that you're talking about it and a lot. Someone might ask you, what are you on about? If they don't understand what you're talking about, or they didn't hear you and they want to know what you're talking about. What are you on about? The next one is to be out and about, to be out and about, to be out and about. This is a good expression, to be out of the house being active. So if you go out and then you go around to another person's house, you're out and about. You're away from your home and you are doing something active outside of your home. You're out and about. Out and about. We're out and about shopping in the city. We're going around the city. We're having a look around the city. We're driving around the city, shopping around the city. We're out and about. Someone could beat around the bush, and in this case we can switch the two to beat about the bush. So imagine you've got a bush here and you're beating around it, or imagine you've got a bush and you're beating about the bush. So no particular direction. Beating around, beating about the bush. This means to avoid getting to the point. So if someone's talking and you've asked them a question, like a politician, If they don't get to the point, if they won't tell you what you want to know or what you asked, they're beating around the bush, they're beating about the bush. They're not getting to the point. They're not saying what you want them to say. They're procrastinating, they're wasting time, they're beating around the bush, they're beating about the bush. Another one is what goes around comes around. This is like the first ones. It has to be around. It can't be about. What goes around comes around, right? So if it goes around, it also comes around. This is the idea of karma. Imagine throwing a boomerang and it goes around and then it comes back around, okay? So it's that finishing the circle kind of thing. If something goes around and comes around, it's the idea that you get what you deserve. If you're nice to people, the niceness goes around and then it comes back to you. If you're horrible to people, the horribleness goes around and then it comes back to you. So what goes around comes around. It's that idea of karma. Imagine a boomerang. All right, so we've got a few more and then we'll finish up. So, have been around the block a few times. This one's always said in the present perfect, so it's sort of in the past. She's been around the block a few times. This means to be experienced. We can use this literally with regards to something, or we can say it more figuratively. But, for example, he knows what he's doing at work because he's been around the block a few times. So that's like a block where there's lots of buildings and he's gone around the block. He knows the block. He knows that location because he's been around it many different times. So to be around the block or to have been around the block, again, we say it in the past, means that they are experienced, right? You can't really be around the block in order to become experienced. It's something that has to have happened up until present. He's been around the block a few times. He knows what he's on about. He knows what he's talking about. He's been around the block. Another one is to wrap your head around. So imagine I have a problem in front of me and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to learn about what this problem is. I'm trying to figure it out and get to the bottom of it. If I try and do this, we can say the expression to wrap my head. Imagine that I get my brain and I stretch it up and I wrap it around this problem, or I get my head around this problem. It means to understand it, to figure it out, to know about it. So if I wrap my head around something, maybe it's phrasal verbs. You guys at the moment are trying to wrap your heads around phrasal verbs. So you're trying to understand, you're trying to learn about phrasal verbs. You're trying to get your head around phrasal verbs. You're trying to wrap your head around phrasal verbs. We can also drive someone crazy with an expression to send someone or to drive someone around the twist. To send them around the twist, to drive them around the twist, is to drive them crazy. So they go mad, they lose it, they go bonkers, they go crazy. Send someone around the twist and to drive someone around the twist. And Round the Twist is a really good Australian TV show where all these crazy things happen in each episode. So if you watch that, you'll understand this expression. The last one here, guys, before we sum everything up, is to throw your weight around or to throw your weight about. So what do you reckon this one means? If you get your weight, literally imagine you're fat, or even, you just pick up your body and you start pushing everyone around, you start pushing everyone about, it's like to boss someone around, it's like to boss somebody about. If I throw my weight around, I'm being bossy, I'm being controlling, I'm telling people what to do, I am giving orders, I'm bossing people around. I'm throwing my weight around, I'm throwing my weight about. So a boss at work might do this, especially if he's got a really big, overinflated ego. All right, so we've gone through all the different kinds of meanings of the particles around and about, guys. Make sure you watch this multiple times. Sign up to the course and do all the exercises, but let's run through it. The first one is movement in many directions. And remember, we talked about the horse trotting around, running around, walking around or about the paddock, right? And so the basic thing is that it's going around, there's no real direction, there's no real place, and so we can just pick whatever verb we want to describe this action, okay? So we just pick the verb, yeah, he's running, so we join those together. He's walking, okay, we join those together. He's trotting, we join those together. So it's in many directions, in many places. We also had number 2, without any purpose. So imagine, remember that cat is lying around, or that I'm lazing around at home. I'm sitting about at home, not doing anything. No real purpose. That was a good example there. Number 3 is in a circular route, right? So it could be that it's going from one side to the other side, or it could be going around and around and around. So you could drive into a roundabout, and then you could drive around the roundabout, and you could take the first road off the roundabout, or you could keep going around indefinitely. Okay, so you're driving around. You could also drive from one side of the city around to the other side of the city. So if you drive around, you're doing this, as opposed to driving through like that and coming out the other side, or driving over or driving under. You're driving around the city. Number 4 was to reverse direction. So remember, you could be going forwards like this. Things could be getting bad, and suddenly they turn around and they get better again. Or it could be that your car is facing this way and you turn it around, you reverse direction, and now you're facing the other way. So remember, that is sort of like over, where over is the horizontal movement like this. To turn around, or around in this sort of sense, is on that vertical axis. So it has to be standing up like this and turning around, instead of lying down and turning over, okay? And then the last one was those miscellaneous ones. So that's it for this episode, guys. That's it. We'll see you in the next one. If you have any questions, guys, put them in the comments now. For all these live streaming things, I will add this extra question and answer time where I get to chat to you guys about everything and anything regarding this lesson, regarding phrasal verbs more generally, regarding English. Remember, guys, if you want to sign up to this course, there are 2 coupon codes left. So you just have to use the coupon ONLY50. ONLY50. One word, ONLYFIFTY, and you'll get the course, one payment of just $50. So it's about half price. Okay, so make sure you sign up if you want to get all the bonus content for this course, guys. There's going to be the Facebook group where you can join up and do daily activities regarding all of the most recent episodes as I release them. You'll also get obviously more access to me to ask me questions about anything related to phrasal verbs. You'll get a PDF to download of the entire transcript, everything that I've said, every single phrasal verb that I use in these transcripts, I'll highlight. I'll then put it in a glossary and define it. I'll give you a definition. And then under that, I'm going to give you an example sentence of every single one of these phrasal verbs, and space for you to write out your own sentence. So I'm really trying to hammer these phrasal verbs home so that you learn it all, you learn the patterns, and you can learn to use them effortlessly and naturally like a native speaker. So make sure that you join the course and enroll. If you haven't, you're going to learn phrasal verbs incredibly thoroughly, quickly, and effortlessly, guys, and I know you're going to love it. Anyway, any questions, guys? And I'll start answering some of the ones that came up previously. Let me just scroll up. Alrighty then. Starting to lose my voice. Alright, so hey Ruchi, how are you going? Hey Nina, how are you? Anna, thanks guys so much for coming. Rumi, Ags as well. Alright, did I finally catch you live? You leaving right now? Someone from Dubai. Hey Mary. Someone who saw me in Richmond a few weeks ago apparently. Alright, what is the difference between going over to your house and going to your house? And as well, going around to your house? That's a really good question, Lalet. So this is where this kind of comes in handy, I guess, that idea of over, to, and around, I guess. Maybe it's better for me to just explain with my hands. So my house is here, and your house is here, and I want to go to your house, right? So if I go to, it's just in a direct line. It could be like this, could be like this, could be like this, but it's me from here going to your house. If I was going from your house back to my house, again, it's that straight line, okay? So it's, I guess I shouldn't do this movement. It's like this, straight line, okay? I can just switch in a different phrasal verb if I want to use over, going over, walking over, running over, driving over, but this time the over bit means to go up over this distance that's between my house and your house to your house. We're going to go over to your house. We're going to go over to your house. If instead this time I want to use around, it's like your house is here, mine is here, and this time I'm going around to your house. So I'm not going in a direct line, I'm not going over, I'm going around. To be honest, I don't really think in my head about these literal meanings. I just pick one and I just say it. I don't know where it comes from, I just pull it out of my head and I use it. But if we wanted to think about the literal meanings, that is what the literal meanings are. To go over, to go to, and to go around. Off the top of my head, I don't think there's any reason why you would ever choose one over the other. There's no example in that case, at least, for going from one place to another place, from one place over to another place, from one place around to another place. There's no reason to pick one over the other. So I don't think there's situations where one won't make sense if you're talking about going from here to here. You can use whatever you want. So I hope that helps. What's the difference between around and round? Can I use both? You definitely can. I think, all right, so if something is round, so imagine here I have a coin. This coin is round. So that's describing it. That's an adjective. That is how it appears. It is round, right? The coin is round. But at the moment, I'm running my finger around the coin by doing this. So now I'm talking about the movement of my finger. My finger's going around the coin, doing this. But the coin is round. That's the shape of the coin. My finger's moving around. Sometimes, though, people shorten the particle around to just round. Yeah, we'll come round later, mate. We'll come round after work. We'll come round and check you out. We'll go round. We'll jog round, we'll drive round later. So you're going to hear some people just drop the at the start of round, and they're just going to say round. But when describing something, when describing a coin, you have to say the coin is round. You can't say around. That's talking about this movement, right? So I hope that makes sense. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? Can you guys give me some sentences using the phrasal verbs that we went over, using around, using about? Can you type some down in there below? Can you give me some examples? So for instance, what if I type out, let me know if you can see this, I'm going over to his house later. Can you guys switch that sentence and put around into that sentence somewhere? I'm going over to his house later. Maybe I'm coming over to his house later. Maybe I'm driving over to his house later. Where could we put the word around into that sentence? Can you give me some examples? And I'll just read the next question as it comes while you guys do that. Okay. Lale. So, similar again, round can be used as an adjective to describe something like the coin here that is round. It's not square, it's round. But in those two examples you've given me, what does right round mean and you spin my head right round? That is around, but they've shortened it to round. Okay? So right round would be like right around. So they've put right there to mean the entire way. So we went right the way around the coast of Australia. That would be like you've got the map of Australia here, and we went right around the entire coast, all the way. If I just said we went round the coast, it could be just a little bit that we went around. It could be the entire thing, but I don't know until you hear something like he went right round. He went the whole way around. He went the entire way around the coast, okay? So you spin my head right around would be like you confuse me. I think that's what they would mean there. So if you spin someone's head around, it's that you sort of make them crazy, you confuse them. You're spinning my head around, you're spinning my head right around. It's you're confusing that person, or maybe you're driving them crazy. But the main thing there is that round is the shortened version of around, okay? So we can shorten it sometimes when speaking, although if we're writing correctly, we would write around. We went right around the coast, or you spun my head right around, but we can also say right round, or you spun my head right round, okay? So I don't think there's many other questions coming through, guys. You're welcome to ask me anything, otherwise I might nick off and just get on with my night. But if you have any other questions, please put them down below and I will answer them. It could be about phrasal verbs, can be about anything relating to Australia, guys. Feel free to ask me anything and everything, English-wise. Maybe it's about what I did today. Could be about anything you like. I'm driving around to his house later. Exactly. Natalie got it right. Exactly. I'm driving around to his house later. Noman as well. I'm coming around to his house, though, we would say, because you're going from one location to another location. So I'm coming around to his house. Make sure you chuck in the to in that case, okay? So that's going from one place to another place. But if that's it for today, guys, and there's no other questions, we might finish up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Remember, click the link in the description. Check out the course. I'm building it over time, but if you want to sign up for it, you can do so now and you'll save probably about $13 or more if you sign up now as I'm building the course, as opposed if you wait to when it's finished and you sign up afterwards. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys, and I'll see you soon. See you on Thursday, 7 p.m. Catch ya!